Monday, May 4th, 2015. This program is coming to you live from the Hagmann and Hagmann studios in northwestern Pennsylvania. I'm Doug Hagmann at the helm with my fellow investigator, researcher, and most importantly, my son Joe Hagmann. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, America's premier father-son investigative and reporting team. You know, our job is to bring you the news that shapes the headlines, the news that is really twisted and convoluted in the middle of a house of horrors and smoke and mirrors and a carnival that we call the corporate media. We do the headline and the news triage so you don't have to, and not telling you what to think, but kind of serving as your guide to what's really going on and what's important right now. And there's so much important. First and foremost, I'd like to announce this again. You know, folks, guys, Mother's Day is less than a week away, isn't it? I got to tell you, we've got to celebrate. We have got to really don't take our moms for granted. We have really got to put our moms on the pedestals that they deserve and do something very nice for your mother or for your wife or for that person in your life. I mean, who in your life would win the world's best mom award if there was one? You know what? It's really a great problem to have. When you've got a three-way tie, for example, your mother, your grandmother, your mother-in-law, who knows? But folks, portions of today's broadcast being brought to you by ProFlowers. They're offering our radio listeners 100 blooms with a free glass vase for just $19.99. More on that later, but well, it's how to get that. You can call 800-PRO-FLOWERS or go to proflowers.com. The important part is to type in the right-hand corner online. You got to open the microphone box, and that little box, you got to type in the word Hagmann, Hagmann, for this marvelous deal. Man, make that very special person happy. And just the smile on their face and the love that just show by sending them flowers, what a great deal. That's proflowers.com, and our code word is Hagmann. So that's fantastic. But we'd like to thank all of the new listeners for checking in from all over the world. Thank you so much for your emails. Thank you so much for your letters. I got so many. I was reading some letters earlier today at the studio here, and I got to tell you, I was laughing. I was almost in tears. It was just the gambit of emotions. It was just fabulous to hear from all sorts of people. Thank you for everything you've sent and everything that you've stated. Now, Joe, welcome to the studio today. You got a little bit of a head cold there, huh?
Well,
chest cold.
Yeah, I do have a fading head cold. I spent our first summer weekend. It was like 80 degrees here both days. And basically, my chest head felt like it was in a bubble. But I do want to say, I've been taking vitamins from Ted Baker, healthmasters.com.
Yeah. Vitamins
C and his B5 and 6 complex and his ultimate vitamin B and a few others. And this is really, it started more along the lines afternoon, Saturday evening. And I was down all day Sunday. Today, the remnant, my head still feels kind of in a balloon, but the chest cold went away so fast. And I can only attribute that to the supplements that Ted has.
That's good. And
because otherwise 3 or 4 days is usually how it is for me.
Oh yeah, it's horrible. Essential oils too, they help a lot. The aromatic medicinal area, in my view anyway. Obviously we're not making any medical statements, but certainly aromatic essential oils. I know Mom uses them for her sinus condition and arthritis, and we get those from Katie's essential oils. I got a very, that's a nice part about being an extended family. I mean, of listeners, we can help each other out if we're feeling physical impairments as well as, I mean, the news is so rough these days. We can all stick together and lift each other up, both in prayer and in reassurances. I do want to say I missed saying that our home base on the internet, folks, Hagmann.com. If you haven't seen it recently, go ahead and check it out. Tomorrow night, there is a program promotion for tomorrow night. It's going to be just a fantastic show. We're talking to Steve Quayle this morning, and that had some dialogue with Tom Horn. There's going to be some information disclosed tomorrow night that you will not hear anywhere else, at least not at this moment in time. Brand new and revelatory for Hagmann and Hagmann listeners, exclusive to Hagmann and Hagmann listeners at this time. So I just want to say that we're so excited to have Tom Horn and Cris Putnam along with Steve Quayle. I told Steve, I said, this morning, I said, look, you've been working with Tom Horn so closely, and I really think that, I've got a list of questions to ask Tom and to ask Cris, and I know what their project is about on the path of the Immortals. Watching the trailers and of course getting the inside scoop. But looking at the content, I said, Steve, man, you better be the one to ask the questions, because you can kind of formulate the questions in a manner that people will understand them. Because when I started asking him, I might start in the middle as opposed to starting at the beginning and twist things around a little bit. So he agreed to do that. So he's going to come on and head the roundtable tomorrow night, which is good. But
I want to make a quick announcement too.
Yeah, go ahead.
For two things. One, in the interactive chat, some people are saying our audio copy. I don't know. All things are go here. We look good on our end. So I hope that goes away to anybody who's experiencing that. And two, Paul was on last Thursday, and he announced the new prayer meeting that he was having. And I believe the prayer meeting was May 7th. If you go to his website, paulmcguire.us, the information. But when he announced the new prayer meeting on the National Prayer Day, that's actually how it's falling this year, the registration paper wasn't available on his website. That registration paper is now available, so anybody who was looking for that last week, you can find now at his website at paulmcguire.us. That's the registration for his upcoming prayer event on May 7th.
Right, Hagmann.com. Paul McGuire's the episode summary for Paul McGuire does list the day and time for that prayer event, and you're right, that's May 7th, 7 p.m., and the address is on Hagmann.com with a link to paulmcguire.us. So definitely sign up, folks. If you're anywhere near Los Angeles, if you're within a day's drive, I got to tell you, please attempt to make it, because it's going to be a dramatic, and I mean a dramatic event. That's without even, if you've never been to one of these, if you're willing, if you allow it, it will change your life. Absolutely change your life. Your other announcement, Joe?
No, that was it.
Oh, the books.
Yes.
For the initiative by.
I don't know. Was it the More Month Than
Money? Right.
I do have an email address. I don't know if we gave this out, but and I'm pulling up the communication here from John.
It's on our website as well.
Dunham Books. They received their Dunham Books. 200 Dunham Books were Greg Jackson's 40 Things to Teach Your Children Before You Die were sent, and I talked to Chance today, and he received. There's only 50 copies left, and for those who can't afford to buy it, the email address is freedunham DUNHAM books@gmail.com.
Right, and that, folks. Again, if you go to, I just want to make sure. So yeah, if you go to Hagmann.com, click on the 40 Things icon there, the left-hand column, and there you'll see, right there, very, very clearly, the instructions. Very clear instructions. Please send an email to freedunhambooks@gmail.com. In the subject line, you must type 40 Things. In the body of the email, you got to type your full name, exact mailing address inside the U.S., including your zip code. Please double-check your information for accuracy. And now, after your order is processed, a copy of the book by Mr. Jackson will be sent to you free of charge. There's no strings. No one's keeping your email. No one's doing anything except just offering you this fine work for no money. And again, that's Hagmann.com. Look for the icon in the left-hand column, spreading the truth to those in need, speaking from the heart, 40 Things. that will give you the complete instructions. And please take advantage of this offer. And for those overseas, outside of the country, Dunham Books is making accessible electronic copies as well. There were many books this incarnation. There's 50 left this incarnation. So, and I just want to say too, I want to thank those people who emailed me. I was on Coast to Coast AM last night for a little bit. The news segment talking with George Norrie about what happened in Garland, Texas. We're going to be talking about this in great detail. I'm going to be laying something out. So, folks, I would urge, I've got some information to pass along to you, and I would urge everyone to be, might want to take some notes on this, because this is pretty deep and pretty important. What is coming this is what is coming. And I also want to say this. For those regular listeners who know that we fought, we scratched, blood and sweat and tears, and I mean pretty much all of those, actually, to obtain a different studio, a larger studio to accommodate future endeavors to remain relevant and to continue broadcasting, create quality videos. If the internet does become throttled, which we believe it will, there will be alternatives. We have alternatives now. There will be a faster turnaround of emails and of all communications in all venues, all areas. So you're going to see a definite improvement, I believe, next week. Hopefully, well, we're on schedule right now to be our broadcast next week, next Monday from our new studio location. So having said that, I just want to say thank you for everyone who has really been part of, just for your prayers and all you've done. We just can't thank you enough. That's the announcement there. But before we get into, starting the program off here, I'm sure everyone is aware of what happened in Garland, Texas over the weekend. And this is what I spoke on last night on Coast to Coast for the news segment, and I didn't really get a chance to get too far into it. And I had a little bit of an issue last night with the subject, because it doesn't give you enough time to really get into explaining everything when you're just limiting to a couple of minute segment. But I want to say that America has a huge problem, and it's increasing on a daily basis, hourly basis. Steve and I were talking about it early this morning, and if I sound a little bit off, it's because man, I'll tell you what, we haven't slept. I've not slept in. Sleep has been very limited. So between the move and everything else, it's just really kind of tight. But anyway, so forgive me in advance if I make any faux pas on this. But I want to tell you that what happened over the weekend, in case you don't know what happened over the weekend in the city of Garland, Texas. Sunday at a free speech event. Now, this is hosted by American Freedom Defense Initiative. Now, who's behind that? Well, Pamela Geller and Stephen Emerson. Two folks, you probably know who they are. I won't get into it if you don't know who they are. Pamela, of course, is Atlas Shrugged, Shrugs, I believe, her website, and Steve Emerson is Jihad Watch. Now, I've talked with Pamela. Well, I think the last time I talked with her was a couple of years ago, and we were talking, and I respect what she does, but it's blaming just. It's a very narrow. She's a gutsy woman, but the conversation is a very narrow conversation. And the same with Steve Emerson. They're right. They're correct in everything that they're saying and doing. However, and they're very gutsy, and I really appreciate that and applaud them 100%. But the conversation stops at being at the Muslim component. It doesn't take into the larger, at least in my view, the larger agenda, what's going on here, and that is the takedown of our country. And how is that taking place? Well, one of the ways that this country will be taken down is through demographics. It's through the illegal immigration. This is taking place right now through the through the unfettered access to our government, or to our country by our government. Now, there's a multifaceted war raging within the United States that's reaching critical mass. In fact, I would argue it's already reached critical mass. Most people, unfortunately, are oblivious to it, while others take comfort in denying its very existence. Still others, mostly politicians and their lackeys, choose to skew it to promote their own globalist agenda. They advance this utopian worldview. Nonetheless, the war that I'm talking about, it exists, and if it hasn't affected you yet, it will, because it's going to affect everyone at some point within our generation. As in any war, there are winners and then there are losers. Unless we do something right now and step things up, we will be the losers. Americans will be the losers. What's at stake here is, this is for all of the marbles, what's taking place right now. What you're seeing on the world stage and domestically here in the United States is for all the marbles. We have to use a wider lens than what we're used to and look at all of the issues that are facing us, all of the fronts that have been opened up against us, especially as Christians, as moral conservatives, as people who believe in right and wrong and evil and good, and who believe in not just the Bible, but the principle that the Bible teaches. There's a war, multifaceted war. One of the facets, there's a war against free speech. Now, in the United States, we have what is known as the First Amendment, and obviously, when you have when you have freedom of speech, you also have people fighting to shut down or to limit that speech. In the United States, the model under which we've existed for 200 and some odd years is all speech. The freedom of speech, regardless of content, enjoys preeminence over, we'll say, what somebody would consider hate speech. There are people attempting to suppress free speech with violence. We saw that take place over the weekend. And again, in case you didn't hear what happened, I should be very clear about this. The American Freedom Defense Initiative had a freedom of speech event in Garland, Texas. It took place at the Curtis Caldwell.
Inflammatory event.
Well, that's what they're painting it up. Yeah, inflammatory, provocative. Okay, but it was at the Curtis Caldwell Center. As this event was coming to an end, two males drove up to the front of the building in a vehicle. Both males were armed and began shooting at a Garland security officer. Garland police officers engaged the gunmen, who were both shot and killed. All right.
Was it one police officer?
There was one police officer that was shot in the leg.
That was the security guard. The one police officer was the one that returned fire?
I'm not,
From what I read, that's what I gathered. One policeman who actually killed two of the attackers, both having machine guns or assault rifles.
Yeah, well, no, not even assault rifles. They were AK-47s. I don't believe that by definition.
Well, he had a handgun. The cop had a handgun. He was outgunned. The point that I was trying to make.
Okay.
And I mean, just from what I read too, there is also ties. The FBI had known about Texas shooter for years.
And it's the same old story.
Let go by a judge.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's a lot to the background that's still being uncovered and published.
And that background is important, but what we can get lost in a lot of the details here.
You want to focus on
the larger case. I should point out there was and we were in advance of the my appearance on Coast to Coast. I was looking at the social media, the networking there, and I did check out the Arabic language Islamic terrorist websites and forums. There is indeed a tie to ISIS sympathizers here in the United States to the two gunmen. Now, based on our evaluation, when I say our evaluation, I'm talking about a loose network of investigators that I'm in contact with that have a good understanding and have an infiltration into the network of terrorist websites or terrorist sympathetic websites, and a lot of them are based in the United States. And what they're saying was there was a lot of talk before this event. In the weeks or in the days before the event, there was a lot of talk of something that was going to happen. So what the American Freedom of Defense Initiative did was they hired security, and they paid actually $10,000 for extra security. Now, if you take the number of attendees, ticket holders to this event, now think about this, folks, and think hard, because this is an important fact here. If you consider the number of attendees at this event, which was, once more, a free speech event, but internally, or in addition, there was also a contest that was offering a contest for Muhammad drawings, a Muhammad art exhibit and contest is which it was called, which the top prize of $10,000 for depicting Muhammad, caricatures of Muhammad. Well, the AFDI had paid, by their own admission, well over $10,000 for extra security. If you look at, if you just do simple math, you're looking at, my goodness, well over $100 and some dollars per person. So think about that. Some reports I've seen $50, $40, $50 per person. Other reports I've seen you're looking at over 100, 150. But let's just say even at $40 per person for security, extra security, that's significant. I'll just say that as an aside at the moment. Before the event, during, and now after, many are calling the event a provocation, a deliberate provocation, baiting the Muslims, using the venue to create the atmosphere of hate. This is not me talking now. This is what the media is. This is how many of the media, and even in government, are framing this event. Now, the AFDI folks, in case you're not familiar with it, they're responsible for putting the ads on the sides of buses and on various other venues and areas that now that many of the transportation agencies are saying no, we're not going to do this anymore. Not because of this event, but have been dropping off because they're afraid of being, they're afraid of supposed terrorist attacks by Muslims who are offended by these ads. Now, but that's often a different tangent. But let me just break this down for you here, because I think this is important, and I think that we have to really take a look at this again through a wide-angle lens, because what is going on here is much more than this shooting. It's much more than Islamic terrorism, although that is a key component. What is at issue here is defining hate speech. What is at issue is the globalist and government strategy to advance a war on Christianity, to nullify any type of talk about Christianity or biblical principles by categorizing such as hate speech. And that would include criticism of any religion, especially the Islamic religion, or any activity that would include the homosexual agenda, anything that would go against or anything that would be pro-Christian is a target right now. And you might say, well, geez, that's not news. Well, it's not really. What is news, I believe, is how they're going about doing it and dissecting their plan. If you look at this event yesterday in Garland, Texas, as just a couple of Muslims taking revenge for drawing the caricatures of Muhammad and being offended and thereby, going out and attempting to kill people there. If you look at that in an isolated fashion, well, what you have is this indictment of Islam, which is legitimate, but it's not the whole picture. The whole picture is the globalists of using hate speech, not just to allow or not just to cause a condition where they are gaining they're soliciting the public opinion to temper such events to avoid hurting the feelings of Muslims, but of anything that would have to do, of anything potentially uncomfortable. And I'm being kind here. This is a multifaceted war. Looking at this, you've got the terrorist attacks, which is a very overt, in-your-face method. We had yesterday in Garland, Texas, we had the Charlie Hebdo attacks, where 12 cartoonists were killed in France. These are just some of the examples, just two examples of many where free speech is the target of these Islamic terrorists. But that's the most visible, and that is the most overt, and this is where the globalists are going to hang their hat and attempt to change public opinion. But then we must not forget, the end goal here is the destruction of the United States as a nation. This is by the globalists and the Illuminati. This is why we bring on people to talk about the Illuminati, about the goals of the globalists, and what is really at stake. It's more than just one event. It's even more than the sum total of all events that we've seen take place. These are just events in the fog and in the mire and the muck. What we have is trench warfare on speech. We have trench warfare on immigration. We have this extremely heated extremely heated and polarized. I guess it would be polarized. Two distinct sides of uncompromising polarity, I would call them. Two different sides. And there are people already calling for limitations on free speech. It could and will likely result in incitement, while others are refusing, in my opinion, rightly so, to temper any right to freedom of speech. So you've got a couple of different platforms that we're dealing with. Think about the last time. Let's look back in history. What happened when there was a high-profile shooting of a government official in history here? Gabrielle Giffords. What happened after she was shot? Do you remember what happened, folks? After Gabrielle Giffords was shot,
they called for gun legislation
to
be implemented right away. Stricter gun laws.
Exactly.
On people, on manufacturers, on the ability for people to get guns, the qualifying limitations for permits.
Right. Now, she was She was shot in 2011, January 8th, 2011. She was just a week into her third term in office. Well, what happened? We saw the passage of a bill known as the Trespass Bill right after she was shot. The Trespass Bill, also known as the Federal Restricted Buildings and Ground Improvement Act of 2011, that created what? That created the free speech zones that we see now. That was tagged in there in the free speech, or in this bill. This was supposedly to protect people, important people, not you and I, of course, but the politicians from crazies and others with the armed, from being hurt. So events have certain consequences. And Gabrielle Giffords' shooting, the consequence of that, the real consequence of that, in real terms, in real life, was the Trespass Bill. Very quickly passed and signed into law by Obama right after she was shot. But what's being attempted right now is the use of Muslim terrorism, very effectively, by the way, to change America. We are looking at Islam's subtle assault on America's Christian culture. Now, folks, please listen carefully to this. I believe that this is important because the globalists are using Islam as a tool. Now, Islam is not a religion. It is a political system disguised as a religion, and we have to understand that. It's actually a political, military, and cultural system that is called a religion. But the Islamization of America is one component. It's just one mere component in the toolbox, in the quiver of the globalists. And it is through this Islamization of America that many other objectives are being accomplished. If our generation of American Christians, Westernized Christians, don't wake up, our children could easily be giving testimonies in mosques rather than churches. We have to understand what's taking place. If you look back, the nations that are pictured in your Bible, I'm sure many people have maps that are in your Bible. Look at the maps today versus where, or look at the maps today as opposed to where the maps of the Old or the New Testament. Back in the early part of Christianity, we'll say. You'll see that the biblically oriented, gospel proclaiming areas have been replaced by Muslim. By people, members of the Muslim faith, or Muslim sect, if you will. Look at North Africa, from Egypt westward through Libya, Algeria, and on to Morocco. These were once bastions of Christianity. They all fell under Islam by the 10th century. The present-day descendants of the early Christians, unlike their forefathers, are languishing as Muslims in the grip of the Antichrist spirit of Islam. Now, in fact, the 7 cities addressed by the Spirit of Christ in the book of Revelation that were once flourishing with saved, baptized Christians, what are they now? They've all been Islamicized. Okay? We need, myself, to cure our spiritual blindness. People say that the church in America right now, we're in the midst of a revival, perhaps, and some like to say that, and some say that it's possible. I believe it's possible. Sinners are being saved, believers are being filled with the Holy Spirit, and signs and wonders are being performed in the church. Absolutely. But if you look back in history, were they not more prevalent in the early centuries of Christianity than they are today? I think so. Okay. Now, you'll hear about Islam, and this is where I'm going to get very, very both historical and very specific here. You hear people talking about different types of Islam, and moderate Muslims. What's a moderate Muslim? Could it be mythological? Whenever Islam is mentioned in a negative context, and you can see this on CNN. In fact, if you watch the Geller interview with Alison Camerata today on CNN, you saw this. Whenever Islam is mentioned in a negative context, many will challenge that only a very small minority is dangerous, and radicals are in every faith, every religion. If you look at the facts, they disprove this oversimplified distinction. Islam works, folks, as a double-edged sword. One edge is terrorism. The other is the subtle process that leads to Islamization. We can see what the one sharp edge is, what it did. Examples in Paris. That's the sharp edge of Islam. That you can see. That you don't have to be a rocket scientist to really understand what's going on there. But the more subtle aspect of this is what we have to concern ourselves with. It's real simple. It's a simple process. The terrorists commit acts of violence against us. Exhibit A yesterday, and so on. The moment that authorities begin to investigate Islamic communities for hidden terror cells and supporters, the moderates charge us with religious and race discrimination at the very least. They're using our laws against us. They thwart our investigative efforts to defend ourselves. They open the door for more terrorists to come into this country. And they're being allowed to through unfettered immigration, which I mentioned earlier. Do you realize, folks, that right now Muslims are being brought into this country? You've got so many Muslims brought into this country under the false pretext of political asylum. You've got Muslims coming into this country from Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and other Islamic countries. They're being fast-tracked without any background checks for reasons of political asylum and refugee status. That's in addition to the virtual open gates at the southern border. How many are coming in through the southern border that aren't being fast-tracked? Go back to 2000. Look at what happened where 12 of the 19 alleged hijackers of 9/11 were fast-tracked through the visa program by one member of the State Department there. A lot of mystery clouded there as well. A lot of mystery there shrouded, or a lot of things shrouded in secrecy regarding that individual, a graduate of Columbia University, suddenly gets an FSO4 status and shipped off to Jeddah, and suddenly she's out there stamping passports for anyone and everybody without any type of background. It's pretty interesting how that happened. So you can take a look and you can see that through immigration, both legal and illegal, the demographics of the United States are being changed, and they're being changed intentionally. It's not just for votes, although that's an important aspect of things, but it's to balkanize the country, to create, because none of these, very few, I won't use the generalization, very few are assimilating. They're creating pockets of ethnic and cultural islands, if you will, within America. They're balkanizing the United States of America, and this is the quickest way to destroy the country, one of the quickest ways. So it's just not about the votes for the Democratic Party, although that's significant indeed. Don't limit it to that. Now, what about Islam? Few Americans understand, well, you do, folks, but a few others understand, and by the way, we have to teach them this, that Islam inherently demands what is called a sacral government. This is stands for a church-state form of rule, and that focuses on Islam alone. The moderate Muslim does not qualify as a sincere Muslim unless he concurs with the Quran and every Islamic law. The moderate Muslims in the Islamic nations cooperate with the radicals by default. Here in this country, they are more westernized. But at mosques all across the country, the radical imams emphasize the intolerant laws and promote Sharia law in this country, and that's Sharia law cannot coexist with democratic laws. We don't have a tolerance or an intolerance problem in this country. We have a tolerance problem. If you want to take a broader look at Islam and Muslims, you can perhaps classify them as three types of Muslims, or you can say there are three types. There are the terrorists, the moderates, and the westernized. Now, the majority of those inhabiting America are, I would say, are the moderates, especially now demographically. Perhaps 15 years ago they might have been westernized, but today they're moderates to leaning toward the terrorist or radical version. There's a clash of cultures right now. America is, we're suffering from this prideful naivete. We actually, and I think the majority of Americans actually believe the whole world is obligated to think as we do about the basic issues of life, and that's just that's just not right. There's an assault against, obviously, we saw it yesterday, an assault on peaceful assemblies. The United States, the indigenous people of the United States rarely demonstrate their displeasure over religious issues by rioting. When's the last time you saw that? When's the last time you saw a Christian burn down a mosque over something, or shoot an artist, and I use that term loosely, by placing a crucifix in a jar of urine? Okay, it doesn't happen. You know, what the Muslims are doing right now is attempting to achieve this one nation under Allah. And people say, well, that's just not true. And if you listen to Alison Camerata today, you could tell the depth of her either naivete, ignorance, or intentional. Well, I'll just say lying. Look at Omar Abdel Rahman. Let's name some names here. You heard of him, the blind sheik. He was convicted of engaging in seditious conspiracy that included the 1993 World Trade Center attack and the foiled plot to bomb the landmarks in New York City. And look, I know too. I understand the whole FBI thing behind these people. I get it. I do understand that. But let's look at the statements by the people themselves. Well, the blind sheikh in 1991, he called on Muslims to, and I quote, conquer the lands of the infidels, and that includes the United States and, of course, all Western lands. Look at Imam Siraj Wahhaj. He was the first Muslim imam to offer a Muslim prayer in the United States House of Representatives. He was the imam of a mosque in Brooklyn. He received his training at the University of Makkah in 1978, and he became a national and international speaker on Islam. He believes that if Muslims unite, and is urging Muslims to unite here in the United States, they could elect their own leader as president. Gee, what do you think happened? This was said back in the late 80s. He said, take my word for this, if 6 to 8 million Muslims unite in America, the country will come to us. This is a guy that was paraded in front of the House of Representatives, the first Muslim to pray in the U.S. House of Representatives. How about Imam Zaid Shakir, the former Muslim chaplain at Yale, a political science professor, very active on the Islamic speaker circuit? He believes that the Quran pushes us in the exact opposite direction to the forces at work in the American political spectrum, and he stated as a result, well, I'm paraphrasing here, he says that Muslims can't accept the legitimacy of the democratic American system. I can go on. Those are just a couple. One of the most alarming facts about Islam, if it's allowed to become powerful enough, people will lose their choice to accept it or reject it, and that means us, the Christians. The only option is to accept it. Beyond that, one, at the very best, could become a second-class citizen if you live to see anything at all. Of course, Surah 9:5 says, "Fight and slay the pagans wherever you find them, seize them, beleaguer them, and lie in wait for them in every stratagem of war." That's Surah 9:5 of the Quran. We can see the history of terrorism, and I won't go through them all. But from 9/11 forward, look at southern Sudan. By the way, many Muslims are coming from Sudan and Somalia. Muslims destroyed whole villages. They've killed around 2 million Christians. 2 million. Think about that. Leaders have been crucified in front of their people. Boys and girls have been kidnapped and sold into slavery. Remember Idi Amin? Uganda? He slaughtered 300,000 Ugandans, or Ugandans, if you will. All of them, or most of them, Christian. In the lands where Christianity was born, Jordan, the West Bank, Syria, Turkey, Christianity is just gone, vanishing. You shouldn't say gone, it's vanishing. In 1974, the army of the Muslim Turkey invaded the northern part of Cyprus, pushing out of that land 250,000 Christian men, women, and children in Cyprus towards the south. And I'll just say this too. I mean, I've got plenty of examples. In the beginning of the 20th century, Muslim Turks massacred more than 1.5 million American Christians for being Christian, period. You're looking at really a 7th century way of life. And this is being exploited by the globalists here in America. This is what it's all about. Islam is, again, it's more than a religion. It's a comprehensive way of life. And if you really want to understand Islam, you've got to look at not just the Quran, which is believed by Muslims to be God's word. You got to look at the Hadith, which is a collection of Muhammad's sayings. These books prescribe a vast number of regulations that govern every aspect of Muslim life. And Islam is both a religion and a state. That concept is an integral part of that religion, of their religion. And the globalists are using that concept to negate, is more appropriate, to negate the democratic or constitutional, or the principles of a constitutional republic here in this country. They are using our laws against us to change our laws. And if we look at the United States being built on a constitution, the first 10 of its amendments, known as the Bill of Rights, of course, established by the Founding Fathers. Don't forget, they came to America to escape what? Religious oppression, among other things, but that was a big one. Well, what would happen to our freedoms in an Islamic State? I think everyone knows the answer to that. Where are we going here with this? We're heading toward this destruction of our freedoms in the name of equality. And are we not seeing this on a number of fronts, just not Islam, but also through the homosexual agenda? Are we not seeing this through many other? Isn't this the war? I mean, the question is, could Islam someday rule America? That's not the only question. Could we lose our right to freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of thought, freedom of choice, having Islam as a fuse, or at least one arrow in the quiver of the globalists? And I think that's exactly what we're seeing. So when we look at what happened on Sunday here in America. We're looking at one battlefield on a huge front, or one battle in a multifaceted war. It doesn't matter however you want to say that, but Islam is in the end of days in which many believe we're in. Islam is going to play a very important role. And one of the most important roles is to dilute our society, destroy our Judeo-Christian fabric, to create polar opposition in this trench warfare in which we're engaged. And if you look at it even broader than that, and I think people can see the weapons that are inherent within Islam that no other religion, and again I use that word with an asterisk at the end, has. I mean, you've got multiple weapons of Islam, one being terrorist attacks or jihad. You've got another weapon, race. And I know that there are Caucasian Muslims, converts usually, but you look at the majority, they're Arab, they're black. They're using that race. When I say they, I'm talking about the globalists. Are using race and ethnicity to divide our country. They're also using, and this is inherent and even potentially exclusive to Islam, money. Money in the form of oil, black gold, that being in Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states. You're looking at multiple aspects. Look at how oil money is used for the influence of Islam. Look at the money that's being used by the oil revenues. What's happening to that money? You fill up your gas tank, or you buy oil-based or petroleum-based products. Money goes to the oil countries, or the petrodollars go to the oil-rich Gulf and Saudi governments. And they often purchase, what do? They purchase weaponry. But you know what else they do that's overlooked by many people in the media? They will purchase defunct Christian properties, churches, land owned by Christians, or just push them off, but many of them are legitimate purchases. And they will also take that money, send it to the imams here in this country to do the same. So a lot of the money spent, our money spent on oil, is being used for terrorism and for matters of demographics. And I mean, it's a system that was created by the Western intelligence agencies, but it's being exploited by the world globalists. But the other weapon, of course, that being terror. Look at the increase in terror attacks that we've seen on a national or an international level since 9/11. Just to name a few. I mean, November 28th, 2002, Mombasa, Kenya. Car bombing of an Israeli-owned hotel in Kenya. The so-called Ramadan greeting to the Palestinian people, October 14th. That same year, the Bali bombs, Bali, Indonesia. Killing, over 200 people, mostly Western tourists, wounding like 600 people. And you can go backwards as well. Look at the attack on the USS Cole. Look at the bombings in Kenya and Tanzania. Look at the remember Luxor, Egypt. Remember Khobar Towers in Saudi Arabia back in June of 1996. It seems like we as Americans and Westerners in general have a very short attention span and an even shorter memory. Remember the first World Trade Center bombing in February of 1993, February 26, 1993. But the big part here is to silence the opposition, whatever tactic, terrorism, money, race, using race as a tactic of silencing the opposition. It all comes down to silencing the opposition. Go figure. Oh, well, not go figure. Don't forget that Obama, his first speech in a first foreign policy speech, what did he do? He went to Egypt on October 9th, 2009. Thank you. And what did he say?
Is that the speech where he mocked the Bible?
Yeah.
And mocked the, was talking about slavery and really trying to tear apart the Christian belief system.
Well, yeah, he said America is not a Christian country. You see, it's no accident. And even the bigger picture still, if we look at the larger picture still, where did Obama come from? Why are all of his? Why was there such a kerfluffle over his bona fides? And why is there still such a mystery surrounding his upbringing? I submit to you that he is part of a larger agenda, that he is a Manchurian candidate at the very least. He's been selected as the agent of change to usher in everything we're seeing taking place. He's the proponent. He's attempting to kill free speech, to change the Constitution, to change our way of life, to change America. Well, he said he was going to fundamentally change America. But most importantly, I believe, and this is based on hours and hours and hours and months, if you will, of research, that one of the biggest things is that any talk of Christianity, any type of, any talk about Christianity, the Bible, sinfulness, behavior, it's going to be classified as hate speech. How many people remember what Rosie O'Donnell said during the September 12, 2006 broadcast of ABC's The View? People might say, well, who is Rosie O'Donnell anyway? Who cares? But this is, unfortunately, this is representative of the American mindset of many Americans. She said, radical Christianity is just as threatening as radical Islam in a country like America where we have separation of church and state. Man, there's so much wrong with that sentence, I don't even know where to start. We don't have separation of church and state. Radical Christianity is not just as threatening as radical Islam. And that's just for starters. So, what I would urge everyone to do, we heard what happened in Texas. We see what we're seeing right now is an effort by the Marxist Democrats, by the people on the left, these so-called progressives. They're not. More appropriately, they're Marxist communists. They're using Islam as a tool. But what they're doing is they're changing the conversation. We cannot allow ourselves to fall into that trap. We cannot allow the conversation to be changed from the issue at hand. If you're going to talk about the attacks in Texas, it's not about this alleged provocation and baiting, as many will have you believe. It's not about the fact that we need to temper our freedom of speech with something more tolerant, although that's where they want to take the conversation. It's not about that at all. At the very least, it's about the intolerance of the Muslims. But more importantly, and this is where I would like everyone to really look, it goes well beyond all of that. We're looking at the end game here, folks. This is my view. This is the end game. We're in the final stages of the end game. This is where all of everything is going to come together. This is for all the marvels. This is for everything. This is going to be the criminalization of Christianity, the tempering of free speech, the jailing of political dissidents. This is going to be the implementation, ultimately, of martial law in this country, because all of the aforementioned events will cause the select few to rise up and to fight against this agenda. And there will be blood on the streets. There will be a greater split than there was during the first American Civil War. When we come back from the break, we're going to tell you about another thing that's under the radar, what the FCC is doing. And we were warning you about this through net neutrality. We were warning about this. You see that. You remember the Fairness Doctrine when it was lifted back in 1987? Back then, there was only 75 talk shows in the entire country. Think about that. In 1987, there were 75 talk shows in the country.
Wow.
And they had to abide by the Fairness Doctrine. I'll tell you what's going to happen next. Stay with
4th, 2015. Just a quick correction on that last Pro Flowers advertisement. The sale will be ending on midnight Friday.
What would I say?
Not today. Not tonight at midnight. Friday.
See?
At midnight.
I got so excited there, I just forgot what day it was. Yeah, this Friday at midnight. Thanks for that, Joe. Thanks for catching that. Good catch. All right.
Yeah, as you said at the bottom of the last hour, we were going to get into the FCC. There's a headline today. FCC Commissioner, Feds may come for Drudge.
Ajit Pai.
The Drudge Report. Federal Communications Commissioner member Ajit Pai said over the weekend that he foresees a future in which federal regulators will seek to regulate websites based on political content using the power of the FCC or Federal Elections Commissions, the FEC. He also revealed that his opposition to net neutrality regulations has resulted in personal harassment and threats to his family.
Oh, the Chicago way.
Speaking on a panel at the annual Right Online conference in Washington, D.C. on Saturday, Pai told audience members, "I can tell you it has not been an easy couple of months for me personally. My address has been publicly released, my wife's name, kids' names and birthdays, my phone number, and all kinds of threats have come in online."
See, and this is a guy, and Joe, this is a guy that's got protection. I mean, he's high up there in the chain in this cabinet-level position as the chairman of the FCC, or a member of the FCC, not chairman. So he's got some level of protection. They throw his name out there, and he's getting threats. What do you think we get? Anyway.
Well, they go on to say here, Pai, one of two Republicans on a 5-member FCC, has been outspoken critic of net neutrality regulations passed by the agency on February 26th. The rules, which are set to take effect on the 12th of June, reclassify Internet providers as utilities and command them not to block or throttle online traffic. However, Pai said it was only the beginning. In the future, he said, I could easily see this migrating over the direction of content. What you are seeing now is an impulse not just to regulate the roads over which traffic goes, but the traffic itself.
What a great analogy. Joe, that's exactly what they're going to do.
Yeah, and his next statement here, continuing, he says, it's conceivable to see the government saying, we think the Drudge Report is having a disproportionate effect on our political discourse. He doesn't have to file anything with the FEC. The FCC doesn't have the ability to regulate anything, he says. He wants to start tampering down on websites like that. In February, Pai co-authored an editorial with former FEC chairman Lee Goldman that warned of efforts by those agencies to regulate content online.
Remember the 322-page report? 322? Gee. Interesting number. Go ahead.
Is it unthinkable that some government agency would say the marketplace of ideas is too fraught with dissidents, that everybody from Drudge Report to Fox News is playing unfairly in the online political speech sandbox? I don't think so, Pai said. The First Amendment means not just the cold parchment that's in the Constitution. It's an ongoing cultural commitment. And I sense that among a substantial number of Americans and a disturbing number of regulators here in Washington, that online speech is considered a dangerous, brave new world that needs to be regulated, he concluded. And it goes on to subheadline, billions and billions to subsidize internet service.
Yep. Pi talked about the FCC's finances, the imposition of taxes on internet usage, and the subsidies for internet service. Now, when you and I talked about this before airtime, we said, the fairness doctrine has reached a level of pushback by the people. Okay, so what they're doing here is repackaging the fairness doctrine through this particular FCC initiative and classifying it as a utility, taxing the hell out of this. Or the hell into this, maybe, is the better word to use or better phrase to use. And I mean that sincerely, because these people are globalists and they have an agenda, a very Luciferian agenda. So what they're going to do, they're reclassifying internet providers as utilities. That in turn allows the FCC to impose what is known as a Universal Service Fund tax, a USF fund tax. And guess how much that fund's got in there?
I did see the number earlier.
$12 billion
annually.
Yeah. It's so large that the FCC has requested it to be allowed to, that they be allowed to transfer $25 million of the money to its own budget and to administer the fund. Now, some people in Congress have proposed limiting the size of the fund to $9 billion. Oh boy,
that'll do the trick.
Yeah. And anyway, but see, this is another tactic, and if it's going
back. Where's all that
money
money going?
Well, that's a great question.
I mean, $12 billion annually is not pocket change. It's not. I mean, it's ridiculous to think about that kind of money.
Well, it's interesting because Pi said that proposals to expand certain programs funded by the USF, where this money is going, could cost billions. Okay. Now, where the money going in this case? Okay. Well, for example, one of the funding entities, or where some of the funding is going, is to a program called Lifeline. Now, you might know this as the Obama phone program.
Okay. Yeah, the free phones and this gets into the free broadband that they're trying to implement across the urban areas that don't have the money for broadband. We talked about this at length, I think, a few weeks ago.
Yep.
Why the rollout of the phones are so important, to get the rollout of free broadband, to get everybody interconnected on this internet, and what that was for, and why everybody had to have, and why everybody will be, quote unquote, connected to the internet. It's just a step in the direction they're taking us.
See, and we're affected, but you and I, folks, the Hagmann Hagmann report is affected through broadband, because broadband is expensive. It's a lot more expensive than the phone service would be. When you're syndicated, or you're pushing out more juice, we'll say, or causing more traffic over the internet, there's through other venues, there's a price to pay for that. So this could get very expensive, and so can you think of it this way? Think of it as this: we're not going to regulate what you can and can't say. We're just going to make it so cost prohibitive that we're going to shut you up. Period. And that's kind of what's going to be taking place here. Or we're going to make it so prohibitive, or if you're drawing so much bandwidth, well, that's not fair to other websites, especially those websites who have differing opinions than yours. So we're going to throttle you back, and based on not the road on which you drive, but the car that you're driving, to use Pi's analogy. And we're just going to cut you off that way. So it's the same result, different tactics. You see, a leopard doesn't change its spots. The goals and objectives are the same by these globalist Luciferians, and this is just another method, another way to accomplish this. I got a great announcement. You want to make the announcement? I got a great announcement. Go ahead. Is this firm? Or
well,
not?
This is the author author of The Criminalization of Christianity.
And faith2action.org founder.
Janet Porter. She said that she believes Thursday will work fine and wanted to know the times. And she said that just let her know what time. And I sent her an email telling her the time of our show and letting her know we'd like to have her for the whole show, but she can stay for as long as little as she'd like. And then just awaiting a response. And I just sent that out. So.
Okay. Well, I got to tell you, she is one. She's incredible. What an incredible speaker. And you want to talk about where we're going with all of this.
And again, if I can jump in with another announcement here. We said this at the beginning of the show. When Paul McGuire was on last Thursday, he announced a new prayer meeting he was holding on Thursday, May 7th. And they did not have the registration page up on his website. So anybody who is looking for that, go back to paulmcguire.us now, and you can find the registration page to sign up to be a part of that prayer meeting.
Right, and if you don't mind, just mention that you heard it on Hagmann Hagmann. That way he knows where people are hearing about this. Not for any accolades for us, but just really as a matter of course for them. A lot of this is, there's a lot of coordination too, and especially if you're coming from a long distance. Anyway, that does help in their planning as well. So,
another article here. About the Department of Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security scales back license plate tracking surveillance, or so they say. The Department of Homeland Security has scaled back the scope of contractor requirements for what would have been a nationwide license plate scanning effort amid continued uproar over the on-again, off-again project. The new system, announced last month, will compile license plate records from at least 25 states instead of all states. DHS Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials say in the 1st of May, modifications of the contract requirements. Officials later told Gov relaxing the requirements would allow more companies to compete for the job. More than a year ago, DHS Secretary Jen Johnson canceled a similar plate tracking project after concerns were raised that the data searching tools were essentially amounting to location tracking technology. Under this revised plan, the number of records supplied monthly by the contract would also decrease. Modified contracts say the vendor must supply at least 6 million records per month, replacing the April specifications of 30 million records per month.
So I just want to say this: you like to jab him. His first name is Jay, and I know you.
Jan.
I know you like.
Yeah, Jan Johnson. I don't know.
It's
in my head.
You effeminize or make him effeminate, which is not a bad thing, I suppose. But.
All right. But it goes on to say that ICE service will scour for known license plate numbers associated with aliens who are immigration enforcement priorities and track them where and when the vehicle has traveled within a specific period of time, government officials say. Homeland Security maintains the service will not create a repository of license plate data, but instead create a mechanism to search separate databases maintained by private and government agencies. And
you've got just a tremendous amount of data being collected, and
this is the thing. They're pouring all this money into it, and they're saying this is for immigration and customs, that they're seeking to tracking illegal aliens and deporting them. At the same time, they have these open door policies that are letting them in here. What's the purpose? I mean, what are you tracking them for if you're just letting them walk through the front door?
Hey, you gotta keep track of them so you can work them into your. Yeah, I don't want. I don't even want to say what I'm thinking there because that might get me in trouble. But you're looking at the this skewed immigration, and as I like to call it, the balkanization of America, and I think that's in full swing. This is just it's. Let me just veer off here a little bit because we talk about immigration, and. If you go back 100 years, and I like because I just am a student of history, and I think we can find a lot of answers in history, and history is not being taught. Teddy Roosevelt, when he was president, he said the one absolutely certain way of bringing this nation to ruin, of preventing all possibility of its continuing as a nation at all, would be to permit it to become a tangle of squabbling nationalities. Now, boy, that would have been a really non-PC thing to say back then or today, wouldn't it? But anyway, if you follow that particular wisdom, look at immigration statistics for 50 years or 40 years, from 1924 through 1964. Roughly 175,000 per year immigrated from, listen to me carefully, compatible countries. I'm talking about more westernized countries like the UK, France, and Western European countries. So 175,000 people per year from 24 through 1964. They assimilated by speaking English, and they became part of our fabric of life. They met the criteria for religion, cultural, and other similarities with that fit really nicely in America. And I was talking to my wife about this. I had the occasion. I had to talk to the IRS. We had a very arduous process to obtain the studio. It seemed that way anyway, and at the very last moment things came through. But when I called the IRS, I was talking with a person who could barely speak English. And now you might think, well, that's a racist thing to say, or that doesn't make any difference. But it does when you're talking, when you're saying 9, and they don't understand, like the number 9, and they don't understand what they don't understand what the number is, or they cannot say it. Their accent is so heavy, or their ability to talk the English language is so skewed that there could be errors made, and errors made very quickly. But anyway, in 1965, so 175,000 per year between 1924 and 1964 from Western European countries primarily, people that were compatible with our way of life. Now go to 1965. Edward Kennedy. In my view, he committed the greatest act of terrorism, or a greatest act to tear our country down, through this stealth introduction and passage of the Immigration Reform Act. Now think about this. The Immigration Reform Act back in 1965. From 175,000 compatible immigrants annually, there was this wave, this human wave of 1 million people from third world countries, cultures who were still living in grass huts, who never saw a septic system or a sewer system, ethnic strife-ridden countries, and religiously at odds completely with the Judeo-Christian fabric of our country. It went from 175,000 compatible immigrants to over 1 million per year from countries that were completely incompatible with our way of life. That's when the balkanization of this country began. So just think about that, okay? Think about that. The 20 million illegal aliens that are here, that are not assimilating, who are not assimilating into our culture. What Kennedy began, I suppose you could say it was like a pot of water simmering from the heat of too many immigrants. But when you take the millions of incompatible people or incompatible cultures of the people who have come in here, you begin to notice, because just look at the pockets of non-assimilating, areas across the United States. And if you look at the leadership of the United States, some people will say it's ignorance. Others might call it arrogance. I call it an agenda of globalization. We're still adding in excess of 1 million legal immigrants per year, mostly from third world countries. illegals and millions of even some of the legal immigrants feel no need whatsoever to adapt to, assimilate our culture or our language. And I think that look, I really do believe that this is important enough to really, to really press this issue. Because at the heart of this, we're going to see, as I said before, a civil war in this country break out like you've never seen it before. Joe, did you see that letter from the Baltimore sergeant who said it's about to get ugly? Did you happen to see that?
No, I did not.
Yeah, there's a letter floating around, and it's been authenticated from a sergeant of the the Baltimore police force. It's a very simple letter saying that basically you ain't seen nothing yet with these riots. It's about to get really ugly.
Well, was there a poll recently? 96% of Americans believe there is a continuation of the unrest in U.S. cities across the United States this summer.
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I spoke to my daughter's my youngest daughter. She's a doll. She asked me for advice on a lease on a car, and so I was talking to the salesman at the car dealership, the person who does the leases. Okay, and you have to know my daughter. You just have to know her. Okay, just to understand. She said, "Hey, can you help me talk to this guy and make sure I'm not getting a raw deal and stuff." So we got to talking, and the guy, I don't even know how he came up with this, but the guy said, your daughter should have dependable transportation. And I said, "Oh yeah, of course." But the way he said it kind of made me ask the question, well, why? What's going on? I mean, what would make you say that, aside from the obvious? And the more we got talking, the freer he felt with me. And he said, "Well, look, I don't want to say much, but I really believe that, boy, things are going to get really bad this summer." And I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Well, I mean, look what's going on in Baltimore. It's coming here. It's coming to this part of the country. It's going to go all over the country. And, you don't want to be stuck somewhere without the ability to get from point A to home or to be able to move, out of the way." And I thought that was really interesting from this guy who didn't even know me, but even the people in Main Street, USA are starting to talk about this. I just found it interesting. So more and more people, I think, are starting to wake up. I don't know, Joe. I mean, that's a pretty interesting statistic, 96%.
I don't know. It could just be based on what we've seen from Ferguson to Baltimore in this year alone, and the tensions that they're just expecting it, and the uprise of police violence that we've seen in some of these cases, and the twisting and spin of some of the legitimate cases that we've seen to make look like it's been, abuse of police violence or powers.
Well, what do you know what I'm interested in people, in listeners, what listeners think about. We see the militarization of police, and this is in reading and researching the forums. Oh, one thing I forgot to say. Let me just back up here, and I know people just hate this. I get emails saying, "Doug, you just gotta. Would you just at least finish one cohesive thought before you start another?" Anyway, one thing I did forget to mention earlier when I was preparing for Coast to Coast last night. I was talking with Tom Danheiser and the producer for George Norrie, and we were talking about what's going on or what went on in Garland, Texas, and he said, "What are you seeing on the message boards?" And I just want to bring this up because I think that people need to hear this and really understand this. The trending discussion right now on Islamic forums and Arabic language message board has become much more radical over the last, I'm going to say 12 to 18 months, but in particular, really since the end of March, beginning of April, right here in the United States. Now, think about that. What I'm saying to you is you've got more people advocating violence here in the United States on American soil against malls, against churches, against Jewish synagogues, at public events like the event in Garland, Texas. This has been ratcheted up, and this is something that we've notified. Actually, the loose knit of investigators that we have been in contact with their known and trusted contacts at the FBI, and turned some information over, saying, "Look, you better watch Minneapolis. You better watch the Mall of America. You better watch the office buildings in Miami. You better take a really hard look at the national landmarks, including the Arch in St. Louis and the Golden Gate Bridge and locations in New York. But you also better take a look at small churches and small elementary schools in the heartland, because there is this bloodlust right now shaping up. So I just wanted to point that out. This is a very real concern. Now, we can look at the larger picture too of the drills, and of course the mixture of the FBI and the DHS into these drills, or the drills and things that happen, like with the London bombings, consistent with all this. We know that there's interplay between these groups, between the intelligence agencies as well as the terrorists, and we know that there's some staging, if you will. But beyond that, there is this inherent ratcheting up of this, and we need to keep our eyes on this very carefully. I just want to make sure that people were aware of that, and it's going to happen. What happened yesterday will happen again. You could take that to the bank. It's going to happen again. And it's interesting because I was watching, and this was my original thought. I was reading and listening and more reading on forums, political forums, and survival forums. It's interesting because people, Joe, were talking about the appearance of the police as being militarized. One of the first things out of it seemed like several forums, the first comments, look at the police. They look like military. They look like military as opposed to police officers. But what they were referring to was the private security hired by Pamela Geller and Stephen Emerson. But still, even outside of that, the police department of Garland or the respondent officers did look pretty militarized. But in this case, is that okay? I mean, is that okay? In this case, it worked. So you and think about this. I mean, we have people, and even me. You look at the rise of the warrior cop, a book, by the way, by the same name by Radley Balko, and you look at how militarized the police forces have become. Yet that was appropriate yesterday, right? I mean, or am I looking at this in a different or another way? It was.
I mean, from what we understand yeah, the amount of security was obviously a good idea, but what really happened, why it happened, who was behind it, that's a whole other story. Not that there's a conspiracy and everything, but there are some red flags here that we'll never really see truthfully addressed if there was the level of foul play, which some are indicating.
And
like
why,
Michael
why
Savage
is that? Yeah,
came out today and said that ISIS is directly tied into the White House.
Oh, absolutely.
Using this as an example, and I didn't listen to him. I was quoting from a headline I saw.
But why why is this? Seriously, if you look at what happened yesterday, the two perps, at least one of the two, they were he was on the radar of the FBI since 2006. They knew of him since 2006. It seems like this is not the exception. This is the rule anymore.
FBI had known about suspected Texas shooter for years.
Right.
One headline stated today. And now there was an updated headline. Let me go back here and see if it's still there. That says that both shooters were known by the FBI since '07.
Okay. So this is more the rule than the exception anymore, what we're seeing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, man, I'm going to tell you. I'm just, you're looking at, really, in my view, you're looking at really the end game, in my view. I do believe that this summer is going to be unlike any other summer before or in history. I truly believe that.
I hope you're wrong.
Well, I hope I am too, and if I am, I praise God, because I don't want to see, any battles take place at all.
Well, here's a story we talked about last week that is continuing into this week. The war on cash. Why the powers that be are pushing a cashless society. We can't rein in banks if we can't pull our money out of them. Martin Armstrong summarizes the headway being made to ban cash and argues the goal of those pushing cashless societies are to prevent bank runs and increase their control. The central banks are planning drastic restrictions on cash itself. They see moving to electronic money will first eliminate the underground economy, but secondly, they believe it will prevent a banking crisis. This idea of eliminating cash was first floated as the normal trial balloon to see how people take it. It was first launched by Kenneth Rogoff from Harvard University and William Buter, the chief economist at Citigroup. Their claims have been widely hailed, and their papers are now the foundation for a new age of economic totalitarianism that confronts us. Rogoff and Buter have laid the groundwork for the end of much of our freedom and will one day be considered the new Marx hindsight. They sit in their lofty offices but do not have real-world practical experiences beyond theory. Considerations of their arguments have shown how governments can seize all economic power and destroy cash in the process while eliminating all rights. Physical paper money provides the check against negative interest rates, for if they become too great, people will simply withdraw their funds and hoard cash. Furthermore, paper currencies allow bank runs. Eliminate paper currency, and what you end up with is the elimination of the ability to demand to withdraw funds from a bank. And it continues from there. And it talks about this totalitarian system. The movement towards electronic money is moving at a high speed, and this says a lot about the state of the financial system. The track record of major financial institutions is nearly perfect. They are always caught on the wrong side when crisis breaks, which requires their bailouts. The fact we have already seen test runs with theory balloons flying, the major financial institutions are in no shape to withstand another economic decline. For depositors, this means they really need to grasp what is going on here, for unless they are vigilant, there is a serious risk of losing everything. We must understand that there are measures that will be implemented overnight in the middle of a banking crisis. It says after 2015.75, the balloons have taken off, the discussions are underway, the trend in taxation and reduction of cash seems to be unstoppable. Government is not preparing to reform what they would require, a new way of thinking and a loss of power. This is not a consideration. They see it only as the only direction, and that is to take us into the new promised land of economic totalitarianism.
Well, I like what Paul McGuire talks about, and when he talks about money, he talks about money being a debt, and the whole thing about the whole thing about money. And if you go all the way back to Babylon, a monetary system was developed based on debt. The elite class, the globalists, the Luciferians, they created a debt-based monetary system to control and enslave others. If you look at it, it's the globalists and others. And this, how are they controlling? And they're controlling us through our money. And I saw this up close and personal. And in my own personal finances. It's the hoops that you must jump through. I understand it today more than ever before. And it really, I have a very unsettled feeling in my heart. I believe that if you, for example, And if you're a first-time home buyer, or if you're starting up a business, or whatever the case might be, you're going to be required to, under the pretext of never having another 2008 again, or under the pretext of some safety and security measures for the economy, you're going to be required to do things, to submit things, to tell your banker, your lender, the person holding your pension, whatever it might be. You're going to have to give up more information than you've ever given before. Just remember what Paul McGuire talks about, the IMF and the international bankers, they print money based on nothing through the Federal Reserve System, through central banks, whatever the case might be. They lend it for example, to the American government and to governments around the world for interest, of course. You're talking about negative interest, Joe. You're talking about us as the non-elite members having to pay to have our money stored in a financial institution, right? And you're also talking about that same money not being in our pockets, but being on a iPhone, iPad, iPod, whatever it might be, right? Some electronic
digital
device.
Currency,
right.
And they say the government can manipulate digital accounts more easily than cash. Moreover, an official White House panel on spying has implied that the government is manipulating the amount of people's financial accounts. If all the money becomes digital, it will be much easier for the governments to manipulate our accounts. Indeed, numerous high-level NSA whistleblowers say the NSA is spying about crushing dissent and blackmailing opponents, not stopping terrorism. This may sound over the top, but remember, the government sometimes labels its critics as terrorists. If the government claims the power to identify, detain, or even assassinate American citizens at the whim of the executive, don't you think the government's people would be willing to shut down or withdraw a stiff penalty from a dissenter's bank account? If society becomes cashless, dissenters can't hide cash. All other financial holdings would be vulnerable to an attack by the government. This would be the ultimate form of control, because without access to money, people could not resist, could not hide, or escape.
See, all of this, how do we avoid all of this?
Be poor.
Well, isn't it true that the majority of Americans now, for many decades, but even more now than ever before, we've become so materialistic, so selfish, so concurrently dumbed down, so immoral, and quite frankly, we've turned our back on the very Creator who gave us our rights and prosperity. And we have forgotten God. That's the way it is. And we've taken our prosperity, our freedoms for granted. And for doing so, we're in danger of losing them. It's interesting to note that the acceleration of America's decline began, if you go back in time, and Paul McGuire talks about this, it began when we took God out of schools. This is when it started, when prayer was taken out of schools, when the Ten Commandments were ripped off the walls of government buildings and in the schools, when immorality and the sexual revolutions were openly promoted, when churches began to stop teaching from the Bible and replace the Scripture with humanistic motivational messages. If you go back to the early 60s, I mean, that's when it all began. And, and so from this, where are we today? We're more than a generation past that. Now we're going to be paying the price. You're going to see riots breaking out all across America between the haves and the have-nots, between the different races, for different reasons, between the different religions. You're going to see the closures of banks, not being able to get your money out. We're going to be in a free-fall economic collapse. There are going to be food shortages. You're going to have soldiers patrolling our streets. And, it's this... I'm telling you, Joe, man, it's... in our free speech is going to be stopped. It's going to be criminalized. Look around. The United States, we have historically stood for unfettered free speech. And I'm going off on free speech again here. because it's vital to a functioning democracy or constitutional republic, more specifically, more accurately. The tendency on the part of government and law enforcement officials to purge dissent, well, that's undermined our First Amendment, our rights. They've instituted, as I mentioned earlier in the program, these bubble zones, these free speech zones. We're talking about an authoritarian mindset. It's the same mindset that gave rise to these free speech zones. It's the same mindset that it's going to end up in muting any type of political dissent or silencing it completely, as we talked about the FCC ruling or the FCC regulations. And yeah, and you know what's interesting to consider? The civil rights movement. If the regulations, the laws that we're talking about, if they had been in effect during the civil rights movement, would there have been a march in Washington by Martin Luther King Jr. and his fellow activists? No, they'd have been called criminals and terrorists. And King's calls for militant, nonviolent resistance, they would have been met by paramilitary officers in riot gear. That's where we're at. So, I mean, it's think about that. Anyway, a lot more things going on here behind the scenes that covered by or hidden by the white noise of things. So,
this came up today. GOP senators Sessions and
Jeff Sessions,
and Isaacson,
yep.
Johnny Isaacson, a Republican out of Georgia, duel over TPP trade scheme.
Oh yeah.
In the weekly Republican address on May 2nd, Senator Johnny Isaacson made a case for congressional passage of the Trade Promotion Authority, TPA, asserting that would give U.S. trade negotiators authority to complete the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement with Japan, as well as other agreements. 2 days later, Senator Jeff Sessions, a Republican from Alabama, posted a critical alert on the Senate webpage articulating his top 5 concerns with the Trade Promotion Authority, which he said must be fully understood and addressed before the TPA legislation can be passed. The legislation, the Bipartisan Congressional Trade Priorities and Accountability Act of 2015, was introduced to the Senate as S.995 by Orrin Hatch of Utah on April 16th. The House version, H.R. 1890, was introduced by Representative Paul Ryan on April 17th. In his address, Isaacson said, "Trade Promotion Authority is good for America, it's good for our country, it's good for our economy, and it's good for our middle-class American families who will reap the benefits of more jobs." That sounds eerily familiar to what Newt Gingrich said before the NAFTA agreements.
At the same time, John Boehner tells Clinton not to let Obama swing in the wind over Asia-Pacific trade deal. Bonnier said Sunday that Hillary Clinton, the contender, presidential frontrunner supposedly for 2016, needs to support the trade legislation that Obama wants to help get through, or help get enough Democratic votes to get through passing. And Bonnier said in this interview with Meet the Press on Sunday that the GOP indeed controls the House and Senate, but that he and Obama needs Hillary's help to give Obama negotiating authority to complete an Asia-Pacific trade deal. Folks, this is pure and simple the globalist. When we talk about the New World Order, we talk about globalists. This is the economic side of this.
Well, here's 5 warnings that Senator Sessions cited on his website.
Go ahead.
1, consolidation of power in the executive branch. This warning addressed fast-track authority that noted TPA eliminates Congress's ability to amend or debate trade implementing legislation that guarantees an up or down vote for the far-reaching international agreement before that agreement has received any public review. Furthermore, this implies that not only the TPP, but all international trade agreements during the life of the TPA. 2. It increases trade deficits. Cities estimating from Barclays session warns, history suggests trade deals set into motion under the 6-year life of TPA could exacerbate our trade imbalance, acting as an impediment to both GDP and wage growth. 3. Seceding sovereign authority to international powers.
There it is.
According to the United States Representative, USTR, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which TPA would expedite, notes in key feature summary that the TPP is a living agreement. Sessions explains that the living agreement provides means that participating nations could both add countries to the TPP without congressional approval, like China. It could also change any of the terms of the agreement, including controversial areas such as the entry of foreign workers and foreign employees. Again, these changes would not be subject to congressional approval. 4. Currency manipulation. Session notes that other countries have been devaluing their currencies to artificially lower the price of their exports while artificially raising the price of our exports to them. The result has been a massive bleeding of domestic manufacturing wealth. A chief danger is that Obama administration could send Congress unamendable trade deals that expose U.S. workers to a surge of undepreciated foreign imports. 5. Immigration increases. This is a topic that Sessions frequently addresses in his message to Congress and the media. He stated there are numerous ways TPA could facilitate immigration increases above the current law, and previous few ways anyone in Congress could stop it from happening. And it goes on from there.
You know, all of this, when you combine all of this together, okay, we're talking about all things financial, focused on global trade in this case, all right? It's interesting because I don't know how many follow the military site Deagle.com. They're predicting an economic collapse and massive 78% USD population. Now, you provided an interesting segue, okay, to this, because what we're looking at here is a global economy. But before we see a global economy, you have to see, I believe, you've got this, it's not going to be ushered in without any type of burps and hiccups. There's going to have to be some sort of economic collapse in America for us to go along, or for the people to acquiesce to this global economy. I mean, does that make sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So one thing that was that is starting to trend right now, Deagle.com is a military equipment and civil aviation guide website, okay, for those people who are unfamiliar with that. Now, who's behind it? That military equipment and civil aviation guide website. Who's behind it? Deagle.com is somewhat murky, but it does appear to be a legitimate, or it seems legitimate as a catalog of military equipment. But very surprising and very sobering forecast, where they're saying that there's going to be a collapse of the Western financial system, which will wipe out the standard of living of its population while ending Ponzi schemes such as the stock market and pension funds. Okay, so if you're interested, or if you've heard of, or if you're interested in more on this, visit Deagle.com. That's Deagel. I'm not going to comment on the veracity of all of this, but it certainly does fit in with what we've been hearing. And the second thing, to again, kind of a segue for what you were talking about, Joe, is on Silver Doctors, SRS Rocco. We're on silver fumes come September. It's going to get ugly. Now, how many times have you heard that phrase, it's going to get ugly?
Twice today, at least.
Twice today. But you know what? 2 years ago, that's what my DHS insider told me. It's going to get ugly. It's starting to get ugly.
I remember that vividly.
Okay, so, or it's about to get ugly. As a matter of fact, I think Glenn Beck had that was one of his. I think he read that article online, but in this case, SRS Rocco is saying, and this is on Silver Doctors. Just a couple of things here. Does anyone believe the current gas prices are going to stay this low for much longer?
Low. They raised 20 cents here in the last 3 days. They went down 20 cents, and then they went up. Actually, they raised up 40 cents because it was $2.59. It went down to $2.38. Now it's back up to $2.70 something in a period of a week.
Yeah. Well, it was like 4 days. It was in my case. I pulled in it was an incredible spread. But they're making the assertion here, and I believe correctly so, that energy and precious metals do go hand in hand. Energy drives the economy, and finance is supposed to steer it. Well, it does appear that there's a connection between, obviously, precious metals and energy, and what they're saying is come September, things are going to go haywire. And isn't it interesting that everyone's pointing to this September? Now, there's also the chance, too, and I want to bring this up, is that, people say, well, what happens if nothing happens in September? Very true. I certainly don't date set. I'm not trying to do that, but I know that we're in that season or in that period of time where anything can happen. And certainly if it doesn't happen this September, it's going to happen soon, or October, or August, or December, or next July. I don't know. But it's going to happen soon, because we cannot keep going in this fashion. It's kind of, you just can't keep doing it. But I wanted to bring those two things to your attention, as well as, and one last thing, also on Silver Doctors, Marshall Swing, will a cryptocurrency be the mark of the beast? It's interesting, too, how many people are starting to equate this digital currency with the architecture of the mark of the beast.
And if it's not, it's a forerunner to the actual mark of the beast.
You did all that information on the RFID technology.
Still waiting to be presented.
Right on.
We'll be right back after these brief messages. You're listening to the Hagmann Hagmann Report on this Monday, May 4th, 2015. Stay final hour, just a few quick announcements, and then we're going to hit some more news and take some phone calls toward the second half of this hour. Once again, anybody who went and heard Paul McGuire on Thursday and was interested in signing up to be a part of his prayer meeting on May 7th, the registration paper was not available on his website, but today is available. So if you were unable to find it last time, go to paulmcguire.us and register for his prayer meeting. paulmcguire.us, the registration paper is up. Now, on the second note, tomorrow we are having a fantastic show. Chris Putnam, Tom Horn, and Steve Quill will be joining us. Go to hagmanandhagmann.com, our website, and look at the story on there to read to see what we're going to be talking about tomorrow. It's going to be a fantastic show, as it always is with Mr. Horn and Chris Putnam, and they are ahead of the spear on their research, as always, and along with Steve Quayle. It's just going to be a fantastic show. Thursday, we have to solidify the details of the timing, but it looks like Janet Porter, author of The Criminalization of Christianity, will be joining us. And Friday, Nathan Leal will be on with us.
I talked to Nathan Leal, Joe, really, late Friday, early Saturday morning. And the reason he's coming on is, and folks, please listen carefully, the explanation given by the military officer in charge of Jade Helm lied with respect to its purpose. Okay, he came out and he said some things, and Nathan called me up after Friday's show and said, "Hey, I watched this public explanation, and some people trying to force fit some people trying to decipher the meaning of the the Sabbath, the shoe, and the logo.
I found one of those shoes.
Yeah, I got that over the
interesting
Friday or
side note here, if you don't mean to sidetrack.
No,
I went
fine.
to a military buddy's house. He served in Afghanistan 2 tours, and it was actually his girlfriend was there, living with them, and his stuff and her stuff was there. And on his new china cabinet, I saw a pair of those shoes, actual wooden shoes from Holland. And I was shocked. I said, "Wow, where'd you get these?" And they said, "Oh, they're from Holland." And they gave me a brief explanation. I took a picture and I sent them to you.
Yeah, I got the picture.
Well, they're the exact. They are. Nathan was right. They're the exact.
This military leader made reference to those in World War II,
and also the meaning.
That's fine.
Jump ahead. The Hebrew to English meaning of Jade Helm, apparently, I haven't done the translation myself, means Western shock, and then if you type it in backwards, it means edge control. It's really strange. Don't know if that has any meaning. Don't know if Nathan will comment on it. I have to do the input on the translator page myself to make sure it's true, but read that today. Thought that was interesting.
Well, the one thing that Nathan did share with me, and when we were on the phone, he said, "I want to show you an email I got from a retired lieutenant general," and I'm not going to give out any more identifying information than that, except to say that the email was sobering, to say the least. It was directly about Jade Helm, and this is a guy that's got his sons, very highly decorated himself, but highly decorated sons in the military. And that email, Nathan's going to be talking about that on the show on Friday. And folks, if you have the I don't know. If you want, I'd send Nathan an email. Just go to his website and just send him an email, just of reassurance and of thanking him for what he does, because he puts in so many hours and he really attempts to get down and drill down to the real truth of the matter. Yeah, Joe, absolutely. Before we get into anything further, can I, Janet Porter, who we were talking about on possibly coming on Thursday, can I just read something real quick here?
Sure.
Okay. Folks, this is interesting. Out of her book called The Criminalization of Christianity, chapter 15, Reason for Hope. And I'm going to try to get through this very quickly, but I'd like you to really pay attention to this, because I read this right early this morning. And it just struck me. This is in her book, starting on page 241, and I'll be as brief as I can here. She writes, "Once upon a time, there was a great big elephant called Tiny. That wasn't his real name, but that's what everyone called him." Did you hear this before?
No.
Okay.
I've read that, but it's been a long time.
Okay. His real name actually was Mighty, but he hadn't heard his real name for so long that he had forgotten who he was. Mighty was born at the circus and never knew what it was like to run free in the jungle as his parents had done. He ate only what was fed to him and never got to choose anything else. Since birth, he had been told what to do, where to go by all those around him. He was even put on a heavy chain to keep him from escaping, but Mighty wanted to be free. He heard from his parents about what it was like in the jungle, to roam and play wherever he wanted to go. Mighty tried and tried to break free from his heavy chain, but always failed. There was a mean circus man everywhere called Judge, and when Judge would see Mighty try to break free, he would hit him with a big stick and say, "Tiny, you'll never be free." He said it over and over, louder and louder, and every time Mighty thought about roaming free in the jungle, as his parents had, he would hear Judge's words again and again in his mind, "Tiny, you'll never be free." Mighty didn't like the way the stick felt either. So finally, he just quit trying. He quit dreaming, and he forgot his real name. Then Mighty, he grew up. That heavy chain couldn't hold him anymore, but Judge had done such a good job of beating him down that Mighty didn't know it. In fact, the chain was replaced with a thin, tiny rope tied to Mighty's leg and a small stake in the ground. Mighty could snap the rope in an instant, but he'd been told so often that he couldn't. Then he stopped trying. And so there he stayed, tied to it, Small, teeny rope that only let him take 2 steps forward and 2 steps back. Mighty swayed back and forth, going nowhere. Day in and day out, told what to think, what to eat, back and forth, going nowhere. One day, some troublesome teens came to the circus and saw Mighty tied up behind a big tent. One bully named PC, and the other one was called TV. They started pelting Mighty with trash and rocks and shouting, "What are you going to do about it, Tiny?" Mighty looked down and saw the little rope and hung his head low, trying to turn away from the stinging rubbish being thrown at him by PC and TV. He rocked back and forth, going nowhere. Then a little girl came up and chased the bullies away. Now, she was little, but she had a big, loud voice and wasn't afraid to use it. She walked up to Mighty and held a hand full of peanuts out to him. "Hello, Mr. Elephant," she said. "My name is Truth, but they call me Trudy, even though I hate it." Mighty moved closer to the little girl and ate the peanuts from her hand. "You're so big, your name can't be Tiny like the sign says. What's your real name?" Real name. Mighty thought hard. "Everyone calls me Tiny." "Well, everyone calls me Trudy, but that doesn't mean it's my name. I'll bet your name is big or powerful or mighty or something like that." Well, Mighty couldn't believe his ears. He remembered, "Yes, that's my name. My name is Mighty." Truth reached into her pocket and brought out another handful of peanuts. "Well, if your name is Mighty, then you'd better start acting like it." "What do you mean?" Mighty asked. "I can't do anything. I'm tied to this rope." "You call that a rope? You could break that thing in your sleep." "No, Judge, I can't. PC and TV, they told me I'm bad and I'm stupid and weak." "What, those bullies? You're going to listen to those bullies?" "What's your name again?" asked Truth. "My name is Mighty." "And what do you want to do, Mighty?" Truth asked. Mighty remembered the jungle he heard about when he was young. "I used to dream heroic dreams of roaming free in the jungle. And that was a long time ago." "You can do whatever you want," said Truth. "What do you most want?" Well, Mighty looked down. "Of course, it's not so bad here. Look, they feed me what they want, and I eat it, and I get to walk 2 steps forward and 2 steps back." 2 steps? Say what you want, but I wouldn't really call that free. 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, that's the same as going nowhere. Mighty looked at how far he was allowed to step and had to agree. "You're right, and I really don't like going nowhere." "So, what do you really want?" Truth asked a final time. "I want to be free," Mighty said. "Then snap the rope," the little girl replied. "But Judge said I couldn't." "Snap the rope." "But PC and TV—" "Snap the rope," she said emphatically. There's a big old woods on the other side of the street. It's not quite a jungle, but you could go anywhere you wanted, even over to my house to visit. I live in the White House at the corner, and the woods are my backyard. So if you want to be free, you need to forget about the lies and remember the truth. You must remember who you are. You are an elephant. You are big and strong. And before I go, I've got 2 questions for you." "Yes?" Mighty asked. "Do you want to be free?" "Yes," replied the hesitant elephant. "My final question," asked Truth. "What is your name?" "My name is Mighty." "What is your name?" "Mighty," he said more emphatically. "What is your name?" she asked a 3rd time. "Mighty." And with that, Mighty snapped the rope. He kissed Truth on the cheek with his trunk and ran free to the woods, where he lived happily ever after. And in case you didn't make the connection, the elephant is us, Christians. We are the Christians, the ones history will show to be the good guys, the ones who say dismembering children through abortion, for example, is wrong, the ones who say Islamic terrorism should be called just that, The ones who believe that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution have what they have to say, including the part about our inalienable rights endowed by our Creator. But you know what? We've been beaten down so long that we don't even remember our name. We're Christians, folks. Sons and daughters of the Most High God, the mighty God who empowers and enables us to move mountains and snap ropes. And you know what? He came and is coming to set the captives free. Thank you, Janet Porter.
Absolutely. And here's a funny, feel-good, maybe not feel-good, but a funny story about the stupidity of social media and dumb people. Man arrested after liking his own wanted poster on Facebook. A Montana man liked his most wanted poster on Crime Stoppers' Facebook page, which the group was able to capture in a screenshot under his mugshot before he revoked the social media move. It read that Levi Charles Reardon is the most wanted man. It gives a description. And then underneath the picture it says, Levi Charles Reardon likes this. Reardon, 23, was arrested on April 24th without incident on felony charges of forgery, which he suspected of stealing a wallet and personal checks. The Crime Stopper Facebook page took a screenshot showing Reardon liked his own wanted photo on the Great Falls Cascade County social media page. Reardon's name appeared under his own most wanted mugshot, showing that he likes this. The move Crime Stoppers page noticed and circled for the page visitors to see. Anyways, he was arrested, arraigned, and his arraignment's for May 7th. And bond is to be set at $2,500. But that's funny.
Oh, my goodness. You know, I really believe that social media is... I've seen some weird things posted on social media, and Joe, you and I as investigators, we've used social media, Facebook, as well to catch some people in some pretty interesting... doing some pretty interesting things. And I think we've got to disconnect... I mean, I understand social media as a tool for businesses. That doesn't mean that they're not going to use, the government is not going to use the information you post against you. However, the need for teens, the need for even 60-year-old grandmothers who should know better for crying out loud posting things on social media.
Ego and vanity.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, come on.
Never used for... I mean, just think about the internet and the information age we live in. Could be used to do the most good in human history of any time ever.
That's right.
Instead, it's used to divide and conquer, to tear us apart, and we play right into it.
You know, we could do a lot with social media to spread the word, to spread the gospel, to spread the truth. Yet you've got some, well, folks, you know what I'm talking about. So I don't even have to get into that, but. Let's get back to the TPP because there's a lot of secrecy surrounding the TPP. If you look at it right now, only members of the House and Senate are currently allowed to view the text of the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Yeah. If you want to hear details of this TPP trade deal, the Obama administration is hoping to pass. You've got to be a member of Congress, and you've got to go to classified briefings and leave your staff and cell phone at the door. If you're a member who wants to read the text, you've got to go to the room in the basement of the Capitol Visitor Center and be handed it in one section at a time, watched over as you read and forced to hand over your notes before you are leaving. And no matter what, you can't discuss the details of what you read. It's like being in kindergarten, said Representative Rosa DeLauro of Connecticut, who's become the leader of the opposition to President Obama's trade agenda. You give back the toys at the end, she said. She's a Democrat out of Connecticut, by the way. For those out to sink, Obama's free trade push highlighted the lack of public information as becoming central to the opposition strategy. The White House isn't even telling Congress what it is asking for, they say, or what it is they already promised for in governments.
You know what I find amazing, and I'm no fan or friend of Senator Elizabeth Warren from Massachusetts. Believe me, when I start agreeing with her on certain things, I have to question what's going on here, and I find myself in agreement with her. Okay, she's perhaps one of the most vocal opponents of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, along with Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio. Wrote a letter to Obama last week demanding the public release of the deal's text, saying that the government, the American people, should be allowed to weigh in on the facts of the TPP before the members of Congress are asked to voluntarily reduce our ability to amend, shape, or block any trade deal. And so for me to agree with Elizabeth Warren. I mean, talk about a bizarro, whacked up, upside down world we live in. At least in my worldview. I don't know. That'd be, man. But we better start paying attention, and we better demand transparency. Or else you've got such incredible, absolutely incredible. The secrecy here. This will pass. This will pass. This will be into law. I have no doubt about it. It's really the sellout of the American people, and really, who's the target here? It's the middle class. It is the people who have, who make the country go. It's not the top 1%. Yeah, I get the fact that they own things, but it's the middle class that really does the heavy lifting here for this country. This is absolutely incredible. I don't know. Can you imagine being told that you can't talk about it? I mean, just think about just really think about this whole situation, and what's the end? And even I find myself in agreement with Bernie Sanders. That's scary because he said this. It's incomprehensible to me that the leaders of major corporate interests are actively involved in the writing of the TPP, while the elected officials in this country have little or no knowledge of what's in it.
Well, of course, the corporations would be all for this, as they can farm out their labor to third world countries at a fraction of a percentage of what they pay now with U.S. American manufacturing jobs. We read earlier and talked earlier, and just today and in the past years, how American manufacturing sector has been eroded from this country, something that was predicted by Ross Perot and others on the NAFTA agreements that would happen. Well, the people who were implementing it and calling for its implementation said it would, increase jobs in America, would increase the value of the dollar, would reduce minimum wage, et cetera, and it's worked in the opposite effect. Now they want to completely neutralize the rest of the American manufacturing sector, and it is as much as the corporation's fault as it is the government's fault. If the corporations weren't pushing for this, then the government would not care too much, I wouldn't think. But since the corporations are the money drivers behind the government, or the political system that we know that allegedly funds the people who we get to choose to vote for,
Well, think about this. If the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, is a done deal, what's going to happen? The United States is going to lose more than 130,000 jobs to, guess where? Vietnam and Japan alone. That's just a small portion. Service sector jobs will be lost. We've outsourced over 3 million service sector jobs in the United States. Okay, manufacturing jobs will be lost. Remember, as you pointed out, Joe, that Ross Perot, that giant sucking sound as a result of NAFTA. And remember folks, please remember who was singing the praises of NAFTA and GATT and all of that. How many? Just remember who those people were. But anyway, look at NAFTA. The U.S. lost anywhere between 700,000 to 1 million jobs as a result of this, the permanent normal trade relations with China. How many jobs do you think we lost? 2.7 million, and that's on the low side. If you look at the Korea Free Trade Agreement, the U.S. lost 70,000 jobs. So what the TPP would do would exacerbate everything by providing special benefits to firms at offshore jobs, and by reducing the risks associated with operating in low-wage countries. And our sovereignty would be undermined by giving corporations the right to challenge our laws before international tribunals. Can you imagine having a process or having a special dispute resolution process that allows corporations to challenge our domestic laws in international court. Disputes would be heard before the UN and the World Bank tribunals. You talk about globalism in all of its colors. There it is. And you know, it's easy to lose focus of what's important. This is critical. And what are we talking about? We're talking about, I mean, what's dominating the news headlines? That's why we like to do the triage for you. The two deaths in Texas, yeah, that's news, but that's not the only news, and certainly that's not what's being presented as news in that subject is certainly not what's important. But this is critical, and a couple of other things real quick here. Prescription prices. If you take prescription drugs, you can bet that the cost will increase. The access to any life-saving drugs, it's going to be more limited, and the profits of the drug companies will go up. Well, look who's behind this TPP. You see, big pharma. They're working hard to make sure that TPP extends the monopolies they have for prescription drugs by extending the patents. Usually, right now they can last for 20 years or more. And the patents are what? How many people remember Lipitor? Was it Lipitor? Yeah, I believe Lipitor they held a patent, and you couldn't have. There was no alternative. And Plavix was another one, I believe, and this is from memory. Anyone who's ever had stents put in their heart or whatever, Plavix, the blood thinner, there was no generic alternative, and I think Plavix was like, I don't know, $4 or $5 a pill if I remember correctly. Almost had another heart attack. Anyway, and also the TPP has got no expiration date. So you want to repeal it, ain't going to happen. It's got no sunset date, and would be. And once you're involved in it, you can't get out of it unless all the countries who are involved in it say you can. So, you get the idea, right? So there you go. And who benefits? Well, who do you think? Wall Street, the international bankers. They benefit. Globalists, they benefit. Not you and I, folks, because we're not the elite, and thankfully we're not. Morally and spiritually, thankfully, we're not. We haven't sold our souls out, but you get where this is all going, don't you? Man.
If you guys want to call in, we do have some callers on the line. 661-244-9839.
What's on your mind?
As we have our last 25 minutes of the show. We will take calls now at 661-244-9839. We're going to go to area code 708 first. 708. Thanks for holding. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Good evening, gentlemen. Earlier, you were talking about what it would be like without having that money on hand. And last Friday, which was May 1st, I had received an email from my employer saying that the wire transfer on my payroll was rejected by the Federal Reserve Bank. And so I did not get my payroll check. So it was a small heart attack moment.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. Why was it rejected?
Well, apparently my employer has no idea why. And so I did a little research online, and it indicates that some employers, when it goes from their payroll company to your bank account or credit union, it uses the Federal Reserve as a middleman, and then they actually take a fee out of, for processing this money.
Right.
Which is, so it's kind of kind of a system where they make this real secret or quiet money without ever being in the picture. So it's a real frightening thought when all of a sudden it's payday, you're anticipating your check to come, you've got your bills already made out to go, or they've already been mailed, assuming that it's coming on Friday. And
yeah.
And then, ta-da, no money.
And
that it was rejected by the Federal Reserve Bank is what it says, rejected. So apparently I was not alone. And apparently when this kind of thing happens also, that the people that get paid on those debit cards, they don't get paid they don't have any way to fix it. So,
what?
Direct depositing, you mean?
Yeah. No. Apparently, with the person that I work for, you can opt to have your payroll put in direct deposit into a bank account, or you can have it put onto one of these debit credit card type things.
Okay.
So,
no, I'm familiar with. I can tell the audience this. Okay, if you work for certain government agencies, you are issued those cards you're talking about, and that's how you get paid. And it's a rather interesting method of payment for reasons that I won't get into. But you're talking about intelligence agencies as well. I mean, primarily that do this, but I take it you're not part of the intelligence world, right? Okay. So what,
no,
what,
but I am intelligent.
Well,
and
that's good.
So that you know,
tell me you got paid.
Frightening thought.
Please tell me you got paid.
Today the money did come, so I was actually able to take a little breather until next time. So,
and meanwhile, how many checks bounced?
None, because I just sit on them and wait, and I just figure, well, there isn't that much mail moving around these days, so things tend to get there pretty quickly. So,
oh man,
not going to worry about that. But by the way, I want to.
But no,
yeah, no
I just
explanation.
Nothing. Okay.
No, it's bizarre. And I'm the same lady that had sent you the images last year of the military buildup around this hospital establishment where the Department of Homeland Security has their main Cook County office, which serves the Chicago area.
Yep. I have those. I've got those printed out. I remember. I still have what you sent me printed out in the folder. Yep, I do.
I'm sure. Yeah, and we were curious at the time why they would need this kind of equipment laying around sort of randomly. And now, when all of the stuff is coming down the wire, coming down the pipe, I guess when maybe that message prepare at the Super Bowl a few years ago was meant towards the government agencies as well.
Very interesting.
Telling them to prepare. And by the way, I had ordered the honest to goodness toffee, and it is the best candy I have ever eaten in my life.
Caller,
and I always.
I'm sorry for interrupting. Honest to goodness toffee. We'll be running Mother's Day specials, and I just wanted to let people know. I don't have all the details with me in the inbox. I don't know if Jeannie sent it yet, but she is running a Mother's Day special, and that's honest to goodness toffee. And go ahead and continue and tell us about your experience.
Yeah.
Well, I had ordered it before Easter, and I served it on my appetizer table for my family, and I was kind of laughing, and not to be sacrilegious here, But I'm telling you, if Jesus had, honest to goodness, toffee slabs at Passover, we would be breaking toffee instead of breaking bread together. This is like the best candy I've ever had in my entire life. And also, last Valentine's Day, some nice person had anonymously sent me flowers from the flower guys you have.
Pro Flowers.
Yeah. They were incredible, and I had gotten tulips in this beautiful vase, and let me tell you, it was top-notch flowers. It was really. You guys have some really good sponsors, and you know I'm thrilled with everybody that I've done business with through you guys.
Thank you so much for saying that. And I've got to tell you, now you're a woman.
Yes.
Weren't you? Boy, it wasn't that bright of me to say that, right? But didn't you? I mean, wasn't that great to get flowers? I mean, I just don't women like getting flowers?
It was. Well, it was nice in one way, but when you send them anonymously, it's kind of creepy. So, you know, always put a card in there. You know, because you wonder who sent these, and so that was a little odd. But I remember back when my daughter was little, and she was about 4 or 5 years old, and I had given her flowers for Valentine's Day, and she started to cry. And I asked her, "Why are you crying?" And she said, "I hate flowers." And I said, "Why do you hate flowers?" And she said, "Because they die." And so I said, "I will never buy you flowers again." So it's always been candy ever since.
Oh my goodness! Wow, kids are just great though. Wow, great
most
story.
women love flowers, and you'd be surprised. Even men love flowers. So
we do.
And I know
that's the secret. We do love them. We do. Plants or flower. Yeah.
Flowers are easy because plants you are a long-term commitment.
True. Yeah, that's true. But well, I'm glad.
Thank you so much.
Well,
all right.
I'm glad you got that.
Reserve.
Yeah, I'm glad you got that taken care of. And I'm just wondering if the Federal Reserve, acting as a middleman, maybe had a little funding issue there.
Yeah. Well, the date was also 5/1/15.
Oh.
I don't know if it's any significance, but it was kind of bizarre too.
Yeah, I like to look at the numerology aspects of things, and that is interesting, to say the least. But wow, well, I'm glad you got that cleared up. I still have those images, and I got to tell you, I want to thank you for that. And I think that we are preparing. We're getting ready for something to happen. I don't know what it, exactly what with precision what it will be, but we have to keep our ear to the ground and our wits up here. So. But thank you for calling. God bless you.
God bless you guys. It's a great time to be a Christian because, all of this is just beginning and we are going to see Jesus. We should be happy and not be nervous because we know the end.
Yes, we do. Amen to that. And thank you so much for your call.
Have a great night.
You too. God bless you. Wow.
All right, we're going to go to area code 214 next. 214, you're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann.
Do you want some oxygen over there or anything? Are you all right? Sorry about that, caller. 214, you're up.
Hello, gentlemen. This is Jan in Dallas, and I want to make a comment. I'm familiar with a few people that know some Garland police officers, and I think about this Garland police officer. Never would have thought at the end of the day, yesterday, he would have had to take his gun and shoot 2 terrorists in the head to keep them from taking innocent blood that they intended to do last night at that event. And the Garland ISD officer who was injured, thankfully, not seriously, he's working for a school district. And to think in our country that we have allowed, as you know what I mean, to have this happen in a small town, and to know that the government is not sad about this situation. They are encouraging it. And to think that this officer has to live the rest of his life having taken 2 lives has got to be very difficult, and they are trained to not use deadly force unless absolutely necessary. And all police officers, wherever they are in our country, are trained that way. And I'm just so saddened for our policemen that do such a brilliant job to protect us.
Amen.
And I just say that. Sorry,
You know what, Jan? You said that so eloquently. Anyone who knows a police officer, at least in our generation or my generation, who's actually taken a life, they carry that around with them forever. And it's not something that it's easy to live with, knowing that you've taken a life. Although they've done it in legitimately or for legitimate reasons to save others. It still really affects you mentally. And but yes, you're right, and very eloquently said.
And thank you for taking my call, and thank you again for talking also about the immigration tonight. It really helped me understand what's been going on the last 50 years, puts us in perspective.
Well, thank you, Jan, and God bless you, and it's great to hear from you, and please don't be a stranger. We love your calls. God bless you.
Thank you. All right. Bye-bye.
Have a great night.
Thank
Just
you.
a update here, or a breaking story. 7.5 earthquake in New Guinea in the South Pacific.
7.5 New Guinea.
Yeah, we just had a 7.8 or 8.1 in Nepal not too long ago.
A horrific one in Nepal, yeah. And so
I'm looking at the buoys here from NOAA. If you guys go to NOAA.gov, you can click on the ocean link and then go to the buoys, and it gives you all the buoys worldwide that are active. You can see if they're fluctuating or not. And there's 3 or 4 going off there in the South Pacific.
Well, and Joe, I think that Stan Deo is right on the money with when he's been talking about the increase in earthquakes and the magnitudes and such, and watching that. The guy is phenomenal in his results and in his research. So, my goodness. Okay. Well, let's pray for.
For 7.4 now and a 5.6
aftershock.
And aftershock. All right, next call 916. We're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann and Hagmann Report.
Hey, Joe, Doug, it's Lars.
Hey, Lars. Very well.
Hey, awesome. I'm gonna make it quick. Let somebody else get in. Also, I just got some knowledge of people that have neck issues, so I just ask in Jesus' name, every demonic yoke around necks, I command to be broken in Jesus' name. Rick Wiles last week was speaking of the earthquake and had mentioned that the Israeli government had flown planes into that region to take out 25 babies that were fathered from effeminate men from Israel. And
help me understand that, Lars. I'm not sure I'm following you. I've been out of pocket here.
Yeah, I use the word effeminate as a homosexual, but the effeminate men from Israel have been going up to that area, according to Rick Wiles on his show last week. And the Israeli government went up and sent planes to pick up these. He mentioned 25 babies.
Okay,
I
got
men that were birthed up in that area. And he also mentioned about the ruling that's coming, in 60 days, and that the word that he got was fire. He didn't know if it was nuclear, if it was something from, space or writing. But he had the scripture, and this is Hosea 9, verse 7. The days of visitation are come, the days of recompense are come. Israel shall know it. What's interesting is I looked over to Hosea 10, in verse 7 and 8, it says, "As for Samaria, her king is cut off as the foam upon the water, and the high places also of Aven, A-V-E-N, the sin of Israel shall be destroyed." And I looked at the word Aven, and it means basically Beth Aven means the house of wickedness. Just kind of an interesting note. And one other thing, with the judges making this ruling in the next 60 days, if you're familiar with Romans 1, it talks about the apostolic authority, through Christ. Then it goes into if a man rejects the word of God and a woman rejects the God, that they would fall into depravity, and a man would follow a man and a woman would follow a woman, which I found interesting how it goes from apostolic authority into this effeminate agenda that's in our face right now. But what's interesting is if you go to Isaiah 1, verse 26, "I will restore thy judges as at the first, and thy counselors as in the beginning. After they shall be called the city of righteousness, the faithful city. Zion shall be redeemed with judgment, and her converts with righteousness." So the greater things that we're going to be able to do for the Lord in the days ahead are going to be absolute, like the woman was speaking just earlier. It's going to be absolutely great. So may the Lord's just great peace just rest upon us, and may we rest in his peace. And Lord, I ask that you would loose from your throne fire and glory from Zechariah 2 and 5. In King Jesus' name I pray.
Amen. Lars, who is our resident lay scriptorian, or secular scriptorian, meaning non-pastoral. Lars, let me ask you a question. Going back to fire, what Rick Wiles said, are we talking about fire domestically in the U.S. or fire in Israel?
He was mentioning, he said that he didn't know if, pertaining, I believe, to America. And he said that he didn't know if it was going to be nuclear, if it was going to be rioting, or something from space. But that is the word that he got from the Lord, was fire in his spirit. And this was, I believe, last Monday or Tuesday. So if you go to that, you click on it, the first about 10, 15 minutes, it would be worth listening to. Well, and can I give you a shout out with a shofar?
Yeah, but before you do that, let me just say this, out of the mouths of two or more witnesses. It was last week sometime, and I didn't say anything because I didn't know where to put this. Now that you mentioned this, I was talking with somebody that has he's at the periphery of the DHS type of subcontractor position, who mentioned that, and I'll paraphrase here, this will be the summer of fire and explosions. Okay, now, I believe he was referring to the racial rioting and such here in this country. That's why I asked the question. And the usage of fire and explosions kind of buttresses or is consistent with what Rick Wiles said. So I just thought I'd mention that again.
And the Lord did say he would use fire in the end times. So I like the spiritual fire because that trumps the strange fire.
Indeed. Well, we'll go ahead, my friend, and chauffeur it up here.
Hallelujah, King
Jesus.
Awesome.
Amen, man. Thank you, brother.
All right, love you guys. Peace out.
All right. Lars, our resident secular scriptorian. Very good. And first-rate shofar man.
We got one more call and that we can take. We're closing in on the final minutes of our show. 304. 304, we're coming to you now. You're live on the Hagmann Hagmann Report. You can take us out tonight.
Yeah.
304. All right.
Well, we'll just have to call you back. No. Well, in the closing minutes here, I just want to say this, that I really, it's on my heart just to say, first of all, that I believe that I believe the Lord is moving us in different positions, whether it's actual physical positions in terms of location or mental, spiritual positions in our lives where we are now at a point. This is me talking now. We're now at a point where we are kind of suiting up for that final series of plays in the end game, in the final part of the game. And I think that we have to take the information we're getting through prayer and the information we're getting through shows, whether it be Rick Wiles, our show, whoever, and just paying very close attention to what's going on. And let's prepare, and let's not be surprised. Let's not be caught unawares or off guard. Let's not lose our cool, if you will, or let's be stable in our mental, and let's just be stable, and let's not be. Let's be aware of what's coming, and it's going to. You know what, Joe? It might be more than one thing. It might be more than civil chaos and racial chaos in the cities. It might be a number of things. So that followed by a financial collapse, or financial collapse followed by the riots, or both. But I have a feeling that what we're seeing now is God moving us into certain positions, again, either physically, mentally, spiritually. But we have to fight the good fight. We have to fight, and we have to stand up and say, you know what, we're Christians, and you're not going to do this to us. Greg Jackson sent us an email, or sent me an email earlier today saying that, regardless of what the Supreme Court says, we have to stand up and to the judges and force the judges and the lower judiciary to say, no, this is unconstitutional, this is not right, and we will not comply. And I think that we have to be men and women of action, and that's just it. That's my, yeah. But I've got a stirring in my heart, and what you saw in Garland, Texas, folks, I do believe it's going to happen again. It's going to happen in a short term here soon, and I think that just from what I've seen and what I've read on these Islamic message boards, I think that we're in for a number of problems all across the United States and even in Western countries, including the UK and Western Europe, but especially here in the United States. Oh, and Canada as well, but more in the United States, as I mentioned earlier in the program. But with that,
tomorrow night, Cris Putnam, Tom Horn, Steve Coyle. Go to HagmannHagmann.com, read the promotional order for tomorrow night, and join us here 8 o'clock sharp.
Yes.
It should be a fantastic show.
In the meantime, just stay safe. God bless. Take care. And until tomorrow. Good night.